basically what I kind of know of about Emancipation Day, or what I have an idea of, that is when the Slavery Abolition Act um, came to play and became law from the British Empire, and that would have included Canada. I know that it, unfortunately, when it did first become law, it didn't mean that slavery had just ended for everybody involved. I knew that it took time before slavery was officially gone and no longer present in Canada, along with other countries. But I do know that it was the start of a change, and from there on, it was kind of an upward um, trend on just change for slavery and for Black people and Aboriginal people in this country and in many other countries as well.
Yeah, you're spot on right there. Just the start of change for everything, and it's honestly mind-boggling to even think of the fact that when it first was even put into place and everything, how there were just so many places that they were just yeah, that doesn't apply to us, and they just maybe it was the lack of communication. Obviously, they're not in the technological era like we are, but it just didn't reach to all sides of the country, and then people were just going along with it just as if like they had nothing changed. And even when they caught wind of it, caught word, and they're like, yeah, no one's gonna tell me I can't have my slaves. It's like that I don't know, that's something that always sat deep with me, because the law is word, and so many people thought they were above the law to think that they continue on with something that was so heinous, and continue on like just belittling a group of people and stuff like that, and using them for whatever means that they've seen fit. So it's the fact that now this is kind of something to highlight and into our history. It speaks a lot of volumes as far as where our country has came from, what I mean, and where it started and how we are where we are now, and the recognition and acknowledging everything that happened, and not just, oh yeah, we freed the slaves, okay, but there's so much more to that fact that I think is left out. And until you have holidays as so, it kind of forces people's hands in some kind of sense to kind of update themselves with the knowledge, and we're in the informational era where you got Google's your best friend. So boom, like, what, emancipation? What's that? Yeah, well, go check it out. Please do. Please do.
I think it's so important that we are recognizing it here in Canada, because obviously, being as close as we are to the U.S., and you hear about Emancipation Day, you hear about Juneteenth, and you really only in the past only really applied that to the U.S. And I think we have this mindset here in Canada where, oh well, no, you know what, that's happening in the U.S. It doesn't necessarily exist here, and I think by people being made aware that Emancipation Day here, August 1st, that yes, we do have a history, we do have a past of slavery, as it pertains to Blacks as well as Indigenous people. And I think sometimes we feel like we are kind of not part of that conversation because maybe it only happens in the US, or the news that we get, a lot of the media and on the social platforms is always talking about from a US perspective. And I feel like we as Canadians, living in this country, need to embrace that conversation just as much, right? And understand that, yes, it did play a heavy part in our history, and it's something that we cannot, continue on ignoring. And we need to now acknowledge it, educate ourselves about it, and start to make the necessary steps for change, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like these days are important just because, in today's day and age where it's not as prevalent, like we don't see slavery, but like, of course, it's where our history comes from, and the reasons why Black people, Indigenous people feel marginalized, feel like there's racist behaviors that are happening, they stem from these things. And I think what's forgotten about, we forget that like there's a reason that we feel these ways. And so when these days come about and we celebrate them, it's also so we can look back in history, learn from those, and kind of apply the teachings from back then into like today's day and age. And I feel like that's the main reason for the importance, because a lot of the times I feel like it's almost like people want to forget about racism, and like without being aware of, like, there was a whole time when our people were just looked at as like they were just made for hire, you know what I mean? So a lot of the biases and the feelings that we feel today when we feel like marginalized, when you feel someone looking at you a certain type of way, or you feel like a bias where somebody kind of feels naturally better than you because of their skin color, there's a reason that those are there. And I think when these days happen, it's good because we look back in history, we get to learn from it and kind of educate ourselves and bring into light everything that we've had to go through as a people, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like it's difficult as a Canadian, because maybe we were not educated as well on our history in that regard about these things as if we were American. Because just like Coach said, in America, it was way more prevalent, and we hear more about the American side of racism than we do in our own country. And I think people often neglect the fact that it was prevalent here. It still is a real thing, but you should educate yourself on what Emancipation Day was, what it stemmed from, and that there actually was racism in Canada. We weren't just another country. We weren't the peacekeepers always. There was racism within this country. And I feel like that's something that people need to educate themselves with, as well as children and youth need to be educated just as if they were educated on the other parts of our Canadian history.
Yeah.
And I think as well, a lot of our history is from like the British Empire, right? Like Canada is under the British Empire, and their background and like all their like the teachings we have as a nation come from there, and their country is so steeped in like racial prejudice. Canada's history may be small, but it's not when you factor in that we came from Britain, and a lot of the people that live in Canada today came from those countries where it was prevalent, the racist behaviors. So a lot of the ancestors that we have, like especially people that are Canadian, like came from England, the States, or whatever, they're bringing over those same biases, those same behaviors. And I think because in Canada, there's more diversity than other places, we can like overlook that a little bit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then just along those lines too as well. I mean, we talk about it, you know, like it was so far ago and so long ago in our past, in our history, and I don't think what people understand is that it still currently exists, right? It may not be overtly in your face, as we talked about, you know, how prevalent slavery was in you know, not in Canada but in the U.S. as well. But the fact that we still see the ripple effects of that in our current societies now, in our societal structures, you know, every day. And I think sometimes we get ahead of ourselves by saying, oh, you know, well, it used to be like that. It's not quite there anymore. And don't get me wrong, I think every year we're taking steps to become better. But it's a conscious you know, decision that we have to make every day. You know, and I think we need to understand as a people, you know, not just one set of people, not a people of color, but just as us as Canadians, just need to recognize the fact that we still have a lot of work to do. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it may not impact everybody in the same manner, but we are all part of it. Right. As Kairo was saying earlier on, it's part of our history. It's not a singular history. Like, we're all tied in together, and it's an issue for all of us to have to address.
Yeah. And through all of this, it always just makes me wonder and just kind of question one thing. It's where has our education system been at? And you know, where like some of these informations are kind of like, you know, like slipping in between the grades and everything. Like, I mean, I'm originally from New York and stuff like that, but apparently the courses are different from state to state, you know. Like, some people, some people came up knowing about, you know, the years of slavery and everything that happened, but there's information that just kind of fell in between the fingers that, you know, we never learned about. But then this part of the state, another state, got that information but left out this. And I've been wondering, like, in Canada, has the education have been consistent through all forms of information to the kids? Because, you know, like, the fact that Emancipation Day is, you know, this is his second year, you know, it's kind of curious to like how has all this information just kind of fell between the cracks, and, you know, people are still kind of just catching up now, as opposed to at least having a good sense of mind of it before a holiday even had to come into effect.
Mm-hmm. I feel like to tie into what you said, I feel like acknowledgement is like one of the big things that has to go with this. And there are many people in our country who will argue that there isn't racism any longer, or that maybe there wasn't even racism within this country. And it's difficult for a man of color to hear that, but unfortunately that's how some people feel. And acknowledging our history, what this country went through to put down the roots to create what it is today, you have to see what it was to see what it has become. And acknowledging our past is the only way to really realize that we have seen growth, but there still is a lot that we can do. There are all these days, and Emancipation Day is another example. And many people might just say, "Oh, nice, it's Emancipation Day," but if you really have no idea of what that means, it holds nothing. And I think people need to educate themselves, especially if you're not educated on the subject when you're younger in school. It's something that we need to broadcast more openly so that people don't have these questions. And if they do have these questions, they can find the answers of where all of these things have stemmed from.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I think realistically too as well. I mean, it's you talk about it from a historical perspective in our schools and the history classes. You're right. I mean, it's definitely omitted. Like this part of our history is not taught. It's not spoken about. But when you have our government recognizing this day and emancipation, I really hope it does spark more interest around this conversation, because I think we all know within our own circles how many times we've been in these conversations, and in some situations the people are around, it's uncomfortable. Yeah. It's an uncomfortable conversation to acknowledge this, but I mean, it's a conversation we have to have, right? And regardless of what side of the line you fall on, I think it's important to listen, to try to understand, right? But acknowledge it, acknowledge my feelings, acknowledge that my upbringing was different, right? For reasons that you may never understand, but it was different,
At least you understand. At least you heard it, You may not understand it, but at least you're hearing me out and everything. Because people are can be oblivious.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Today's day and age, like a lot of Black culture is so like put on center stage and is kind of taking over the world in terms of entertainment, dance, music, sports, whatever. I think people always want to celebrate in like the successes and like the culture of Black people, but you kind of understand the struggle to get there. You know what I mean? Because even you look at something like soul music, where like that kind of stuff originated from, like Negro spirituals when they're having to sing like to connect. But now you've got like soul music and like it on such a broad stage. It's cool to like celebrate the successes and like the culture when it's good for you, but I think you also have to recognize like the path and the steps and the history that's all gone into it to make it what it is today. You know what I mean? And that comes from the roots that all of our ancestors have come from.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in the music, music and food. Like when you sit here and look back to, as far as how a lot of everything got started and stuff like that, like it dates back to even further than we may make it like we make it seem. It's like I think it just started with like like the Ray Charles and like Luther Vandross. Like it goes deeper and deeper than that. Like even our hairstyles. Like the braids that have to do with the routes to get out of like like this. It goes so much in depth. And I surely hope that more people can become more aware of that and more appreciative of it and recognizing it, most importantly, because obviously like when we get into the social media and trend setting era, obviously there's a lot of people that they want to mimic the things that we do and say and eat and our dance, our flavor, our style and stuff like that. But it's just like, okay, it's all cool. I'm cool with sharing the culture and sharing it all as well, but just I hope you understand where it came from. You know what I mean? Like I know where I got it from. Do you? Like you just saw me wear it to school one day, or saw someone's Instagram post, but do you know where this all stemmed from? Like how we dress, how we talk, like why the system that we're in right now is the reason why it is. You see what I mean? Like there's so much to it, but I just hope that people just care to pay more mind to it than just what's on the surface.
Yeah, no, I think. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good, Coach. You're good.
I mean, I agree, Andrew, fully. I mean, I think a lot of it too as well has to be recognized that the fact that the actions that we're talking about and the conversations we're talking about has to be deliberate, right? Mm-hmm. it's not, I don't think we're at a point anymore where it's just like, yeah, I'll learn this because I'm hearing about it. I'm going to learn this because, well, it's around me. No, I mean, we have to talk about deliberate actions that need to be taken, like the spaces that we're creating, how our teams are constructed, how our work environments are constructed. Like that needs to be deliberate actions that are taken. Like, I don't think we're in a situation any longer where we can simply say, oh, well, this will happen organically. It will happen naturally because the population is going in this direction. I have a 9-year-old son right now, and I like to sit here and say that, the world that he's going to grow up in is a different world because of the actions that you as young men are taking right now. Right? Like the fact that you're on this call, we're having this conversation is going to change the trajectory of my son's path. And for me, that's incredible. Right. But it's a deliberate action. You are taking deliberate steps to educate people. And I think we all need to kind of embrace that kind of mentality.
Very true. Very true. And I'm glad, we took the time to, do this because, we have the future ahead of us, and we are in full control of how we want to paint that picture for the younger kids coming up, and how they want to view things. And I've had my role models over the years, and how they laid down the path as far as as appreciation, integration, and conversating with all that matters in the world and stuff like that. That I feel like that's also played a big role for me. I've been integrated in so many multiple cultures that I've learned to appreciate and learn all of it. Like my best friends are like Salvadorians, and I've gone into depth as far as where and how to pupusas or like how they're making it and stuff like that. But to bring it back to Black people is just when kids can sit here and look back at us and they see us as their role model going forward, to be proud and be proud to be Black. There's no shame in that. They made us feel like three-fourths of a man back in the day, but 3/5 of a man, I believe the phrase was. And now we're man to man just like them. You know what I mean? And it's your character that should be more important than just your skin. So I hope in the future, whatever it entails, kids take the right path and and know how to pursue and go about their life respectfully and of everybody. And most importantly, I hope that everybody can respect us, because we could be right up there without having to deal with so much hate and cruelty. Right?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I want to mention as well, so obviously I coach in the league, but I also coach at a university here in the city as well. And I do a lot of, try to do a lot of work in the community as it pertains to this particular topic. And I remember hosting an event, had a guest speaker, and it was well attended, and it was great. And I felt really good about it. And I remember the guest speaker after the engagement, her saying, this was a great event. But then what she said, she's like, but you can't get caught giving yourself a pat on the back, right? And that just resonated so much for me, because we get to points where we're like, I've done my job, right? Like I've done my part. And you guys know, as players at the highest level right now, I mean, that your job is never done until the match is finished. And even after the match, there's still work to be done. So in this situation, it's the exact same concept, right? It's if you are too quick to give yourself this pat on the back for the work that you may have done yesterday, then maybe that dilutes the work that you're supposed to do tomorrow, and then the day after. So we can't be too quick to give ourselves this pat on the back. So yes, Emancipation Day has been recognized. That's fantastic, but that's only a small component of the work that has to be done. That we have to continue to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. I also I was doing a little bit more research on it, and I did read that although once Emancipation Day was a thing and the governments had acknowledged that slavery would be abolished, that wasn't the end of it. And they actually had certain rulings where I believe it was, if you were still under a certain age, if you were under a certain age, then you'd be exempt from continuing your contract with your slave owner. And if you were above that age, you would continue out a contract until that was finished, and then you were freed. So it was always like it was like a hidden clause that they would have. It would make so many people happy, saying, all right, we're getting rid of slavery. Slavery is done. But in reality, it wasn't over for many decades after the Emancipation Day actually had became a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like they found out the information, looked at their owners like, yep, take these chains off, boss. Like, nah, it was not like that at all. You're right. And that's
think about the trickle down effect, bro. Like from that moment on, Black people start a step behind because now you start off as slaves. You might have freedom, but now you have to work 20 times as hard just to get to almost equal footing. And then from there, like it's a generational thing. So I think you see that it's the most prevalent in the States just because they built project housing just to say, okay, you're free, but go stay there where you're kind of out of the way and go deal with consequences from that stem from the situation you've been in on your own. And they wonder why, like, people that have been treated like animals for a while in the same situation together, and they wonder why they feel like they're fighting out there, and there's black on black crime and all these things that stem from there. So I think a lot of the times, like in the media too, you get like painted the picture of like, especially when Black people are responsible for something that's not been a positive thing, they make it seem like the culture and the way Black people are, it's who they are that's causing a lot of the problems in the world, unaware that they were the ones that put us in those situations to begin with. So I think the education and the awareness around the day and where we've all come from is beautiful, but then it's also to show that like the situations that like a lot of us, people that we know or people that we don't know that have found ourselves in, there's a reason we were there. It wasn't like Black people are just second-rate citizens. Like if you go to Africa, Nigeria, where I'm Nigerian background, everyone knows that when you got a Nigerian friend, he's a prince in his own country. But here in this country, I mean, based on matters not in our hands and just the situations of life, you start half a step behind. But then you feel like that's why it's a common thing that Black people always work twice as hard just to get people fitting. Where do these biases and where do these like systemic things come from? I think so awareness, education, and then just like taking pride in the fact that we are Black and that is beautiful. And that's like, here we are. How do we take that to the next level?
Systematically, the governments have been racist. And he had touched on project housing and government housing and how they'll pool us all together and then wonder why things bubble up in might be a negative way. Or as you said, when you see on the media, if there was a school shooter in America and he was white, it's, oh, this boy was troubled. He came from a rough, like no father, no mother, blah, 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 blah. And if you see something and it was a Black individual, it's this loose cannon he was in gangs from when he was young, blah, blah, blah. Not like it's just how it is. But it stems down from years and years and years ago of just propaganda, filling people's minds with false information about Black individuals. And I still see it to this day. People might not intentionally think a certain way, but due to what they've seen on the media, what they've heard from older generations, like their parents and their grandparents, they might feel a certain way about Black individuals, but just because of the history of the systematic racism from the governments and how these things have been passed down, I just feel like we're slowly starting to move away from it. But as you still said, like if we go on the American news, there's a shooting every other day. And if it is a white individual, you're going to hear an excuse as to why it happened. And if there's a Black one, it's giving many reasons as to why it happened. And they know why it happened. And he's from here and he's done this and this is why it happened. And I think that we just need to grow from that, move away from that, and realize that most issues that we deal with in most Black communities are due to the history and due to what we have been forced to live in.
Yeah. You know, like Trayvon Martin, God rest his soul, when he passed, he had it was Arizona and some Skittles. I went onto the news, and this is when I honestly couldn't believe it. This is what I tell you. They paint the characters, they paint the narrative, and then you're crucified through the media. Arizona and some Skittles. And then the news anchorman went into descriptive details about how those are two components used in a specific beverage, like lean or something. You need an Arizona, you need some Skittles, and then so on ingredients. But just like, couldn't he just been a kid with an Arizona and Skittles? Like, this is the narrative y'all paint on a man, that a kid that lost his life. You know what I mean? Like that lost his life, and y'all painting that once again, like I said earlier, with little to no information. yeah, I painted this kid as a kid that was gonna go do something as much as like, you know, I guess it was lean or whatever the stuff was that they're doing and stuff like that. Yeah, you took two ingredients. It could have been, hey, shoot, if it would have been a white kid, they would have been like, he was gonna go do a science project. He was gonna he was gonna make Skittle necklaces for his mother on Mother's Day because it was coming up. You see what I mean? They would have painted that narrative for her. I mean, obviously, I'm putting words in their mouth that never happened, but like as far as that, but like that's the part that was, you know, it gets on.
And I mean, it was always really interesting is the community aspect. I mean, you know, as athletes, I mean, obviously you guys have been traveling around the country, you know, playing. So you had the opportunity to see, you know, different parts of societal fabric within our country, right? In terms of different communities, and I'm a strong believer that it does take a community to raise a child. I totally believe that, but it does require a strong community as well. Like I grew up in Scarborough, I now live in Ottawa, entirely different community, right? But at the same time, you know, I'm in a position where and you are in the same position where we need to influence those around us. We need to continue to share our stories to educate our community so that the next generation of kids can be in a better situation than we are currently in, right? You know, and speaking with my father about it too as well, and you know, when I get, you know, situations that come up in media and I bring it up, I'm like, I'm upset and I'm angry, and he'll be like, you have no idea what it was like, you know, when I was in the 70s or the 60s and where things were at back then. And, you know, so to think about where we are now, again, it's you know, and to have this day acknowledged is great, but again, it's still an indication of where we have to go. Like you're talking about only in 2021 was this acknowledged on a national federal level. 2021, you know, and you think about that now, you're just like, okay, so we've had it acknowledged. So what are we going to do now, right? So I think it's just, it's fantastic that we're having a conversation, but it just inside of me, I'm just like, okay, but where do we go, right? Stop here. Do we try to stifle it out, or are we going to get louder? And are we going to increase the number of people that are having these conversations? You know.
Yeah. First is increasing the amount of people. That's for sure. That's for sure. The next step, I guess, I don't know. I guess that kind of comes into that question. What is the next step? You know, we have this. We're gonna make people uncomfortable by having these conversations because I don't care if you're comfortable. Like, I don't care if it makes you uncomfortable. Like, I'm comfortable dealing with what I have to deal with every day. You know, so we're gonna talk about it. You know, but like, what is our next step? You know, like, and you know. It's kind of, it can be broad, but you know, there's a lot of things we can do, and I think ultimately what we're doing right now is definitely one of them.
Absolutely, and I think the other part too, just to add on to that quickly, is that because I know for you guys, I know for me for sure, particularly in the last 3 years, you know, I've been approached like very often to speak on my experiences or to share my thoughts as a black man, as a coach, as a black man, as a father, and it's pushed me to have to be more conscious of the experiences. I'm sure you guys can say the same thing, but we have almost become so accustomed to accepting certain ways and certain things that it becomes normal. And you're almost like, you know, that wasn't really racism, or that I didn't really, you know, that wasn't anything. It was just how things are. And when you think about it now and you go back and you're just like, oh, wait a minute, I was, you know, totally discriminated against, you know, in a certain position, or, you know, as I was growing up, right? But it took me time to actually like just step back from it, like, okay, you're asking me now to verbalize, you know, situations that I've been in, I've never been asked to do before. So as much as it is about us speaking and sharing our thoughts and experiences, it's also an acknowledgement within ourselves as well, to say that, yeah, this isn't normal. This situation I was in where I may have not gotten this position, or somebody made fun of my name or my hair or my the tone of my skin, you know, and we just laughed it off like it was, you know, that's just Kwesi or that's coach. But when you sit back and you actually look back on that, like, no, like there's no way I should have been accepting that. But we've almost become accustomed to that, right? And so it's about breaking that cycle and that too as well.
Yeah. You're so spot on with that, because I remember there was a time a relative of mine told me, you know, be mindful whenever you pull the race card, you know, because sometimes it isn't, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, you know, and And I've kept that in mind for so many years, and I kind of brushed off situations that maybe it was more than what I thought it was, because I was told to kind of don't just be dropping the race car whenever when the nitty like that, and only until these conversations, and you kind of have to give thanks to whoever were the people who kind of put you in those situations that ask you those questions, like, hey, you want to talk about this so-and-so experience, and then you kind of look back and it's just like, yo, you know what, like that was definitely one of those, and I never talked about it. Like the day I was walking through 7-Eleven, and the clerk was like, because the rows were, facing the counter, and he was following me from row to row to row. You see what I mean? Like it was, I was sitting outside of I was just sitting on the curb in front of one of the bodegas, and I had a cup of soda. I didn't have a lid on top of it. I still had my soda in there, and someone walked by and threw a couple quarters in there. I was like, yeah. Obviously, I'm mad about my soda right now, but like I was like, wait, hold on, I don't need money. You know what I mean? Like, but here you just see a kid sitting out here, like I'm eating a burger and whatnot. But and it is there's quite a few like incidents in life. You kind of have to look back at too, and just the respect, and how you're treated in the workplace, and when you're in the streets, and the kind of service that should be recommended to all people when you go to a restaurant or something, and it's happened a few times in Houston. A guy says you can't come in there with tennis shoes, sneakers. I'm just like, okay, and people online defending me like, no, he has good sneakers on. Yeah, he's like, nah, nobody's allowing sneakers. And then everybody in the line look at the person. There's like 3 people standing by the door. They was like, those guys have sneakers on. If anything, they have the exact same sneakers Buddy got on right now. And I'm like, yeah, I got those on right now. Nah, he knows the promoter, or he does this, somebody here. I'm like, bro, like, you know what? It is what it is, and then at that point, you could respond in such a way that, where they could paint you off as the loose cannon. You see what I mean? They provoke you in these ways, in subtle ways that it can get a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
I could respond like, yeah, I can respond like this, but you may win this little battle here, but you're gonna lose the war, especially when the police come. So, I just kept it moving after that, because all it takes is just one incident, and I'm not sitting here having this conversation. I'm sitting somewhere else. I'm in jail, and we've always had to bite our tongue and all these things in life, and sadly that's the kind of life we have to live now going forward. How to get pulled over,
Mm-hmm.
how to deal with how to deal with authority. You see what I mean? Like it in a way, it kind of brings us back to, like, once again, it's not even close to slavery back then, but how to talk when master comes around, or her master has his friends, around the plantation and stuff like that. That's not your master talking, but you got to know how to approach a white man. You see what I mean? You got to know how to talk to a white man, and then this is kind of how it feels like. How, like, I'm gonna have to teach my child someday. Like, when you get approached, like, you can't just be loose and cold. You have to be, short, direct. Don't argue. You know what I mean? Be compliant. Don't, you know what I mean? Like, does everybody go through that? No, of course not.
To tie on to what you're saying and what Coach said prior, like when I was a kid, if I was going to go out with my friends who were also Black, my mom or my dad would make sure that, okay, make sure your phone is on. Make sure you guys don't solicit. Make sure you guys don't stay in a big group in these areas. You go to like a corner store, like you're saying, and you're being followed by a clerk, but you're a child. You shouldn't have to feel that way when you're trying to go get some candy in the summertime as a kid.
Yeah.
And I think it can also go as far as saying, like, when you're speaking about hairstyles, and if you see a white man get a haircut, you're not going to go touch his hair. But if you get a new haircut, an individual wants to come and feel your hair and touch your hair and do this. And then I think it goes even further, because let's say as a kid, your parents put you in something that is not predominantly Black. And individuals say, oh, you're so white. Oh, you're so white. What does that mean? What does that mean? Because I'm doing something that is maybe educating myself, bettering myself, or doing something that you think is white, the only reason you think it's white is because of where it comes from. But in reality, I'm doing something because my parents want me to better my life and better myself, my education, and I'm not being white. I'm a black man doing something that any man can do. But they're gonna say, "Oh yeah, you're so white. Like you do that. Oh, you sing, you play piano. Oh, you do this. You're so white." Like it doesn't make any sense. But it just stems back to the systemic racism, because that's what it is. They don't know any better.
Yeah, exactly. And no, and those are only the things that white people did because they had the money for it.
Exactly.
And it's funny that you speak on these things, and I know for a fact I'm a couple generations older than you, and I can speak the exact same scenarios. Every scenario that you spoke of.
Yeah.
I can definitely say that I faced the same thing, and it's wild for me to say that, right?
Yeah.
It's wild. So again, it goes, and I know we're in situations right now where all guys a little bit more mature. I'm a bit older as well, but can we change the narrative so the kids that are coming behind us don't share these same experiences, are not on calls like these, and in 10, 15 years from now talking about the same things that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think that's what the most important part is right now is to get that recognition, to acknowledge it, then to educate, and then to take action. I truly feel like, particularly the past 3 years, we've done a great job at acknowledging, and we've done all the gestures, like the black T-shirts or the black screens, or for this, and I'm like, that's all fine, but that it just becomes a trend. All of a sudden on social media, everybody has this black screen. I'm like, okay, but what are you truly doing in your inner circles? Are you having the right conversations? Are you questioning, certain decisions or certain things that are being said, even though maybe your black friends or people of color are not around you? So for me, I'm all about, okay, great, the gestures are fantastic, great. Okay, where's the actions? Show me that these are not just empty gestures, or it's not just a trend. And that's what I don't want this to become. I don't want this just to simply become the next fad, where it's just the popular thing to do.
I agree.
Ultimately, I think, to kind of go back on my own question, I was like, what is the next thing we do? And I think right now we're doing it, but because we have these conversations, because we have these forums, because we have these, like, don't get me wrong, like what you said were 100% spot on, like it became a trend, people hashtag Blackout Tuesday, everybody did it, but like you did it, you did nothing else. You just did the trend and you called it a day, but ultimately though, I think the more we keep on addressing it and keep on talking about it is the motivation for the future, for the kids to, that are still in school to, pick up this subject, and become the first black pianist, or first black violinist, first black swimmer to do this, first black hockey player to go all-star to be Wayne Gretzky's record. Hey, I'm hoping for it. But like this is it right here. Where we have integrated ourselves so much deeper than just what we have become so big at. Like obviously, like our sports, our music, our arts. You know what I mean? But like we start getting into where where your friends were making fun of you, like, oh, that's so white, what I mean? Because of these conversations, it will hopefully help kids to embrace it more. Like, I don't care if it looks like I think it's white, I'm gonna get into it, I'm gonna be good at it, what I mean? And then hopefully they become the best at it, so now we can stop only having the first black person. It'll be like the fifth black person, to the point we won't even count it anymore, because we have been so deep into everything they do. You know what I mean? Like, so I can't wait for it, because it starts with us. It started with us, and I mean, we are we're gonna be as much influential as we possibly can, by just obviously continuing to do everything right, and obviously openly talk about these things, so hopefully that it reaches the ears of the kids that need to hear it, and be proud of who they are, and be proud of whatever they make out of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
For sure. How you guys wanna end this off? Maybe just end it off like what you think Emancipation Day is, or like how you feel about it, or I don't know. I'm just rambling.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not a bad idea, actually. But I mean, what I'm hoping for, like, when this gets published and this goes live, that does it inspire somebody to go and look it up? Does it
Mhm.
inspire somebody to, they're not just going to say, there's some, some guys from the CPL just talking about some stuff. Are they actually going to say, hey, what is Emancipation Day? And let me go research it. Let me go take a look at it. And then I hope that takes them down a path where they're now conscious and it's an understanding. You know what I mean? It's not, I don't want this just to be a day, August 1st. Okay, right? We're going to recognize this day and we're going to focus on it. It's kind of like Black History Month.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we're gonna cram all of Black history into 1 month. You know what I mean? I'm just like, and then what? Our history doesn't exist, throughout the rest of the months of the year.
Exactly.
So it's not simply a matter of, okay, there's this recognition of this day, and it has so much meaning, and it does. But I'm hoping that when we come off of this and this goes public, that people are hearing us speak and they're hearing us talk about this in a passionate manner, and then they go and research, and then they become educated, and now they become informed, and now they can start to change their consciousness, right? And I think that's what I'm hoping this brings, even if it's one person, right?
Yeah,
even if it's one person.
I agree.
Yeah, I was gonna just say, Emancipation Day means to me is it's the pillar of change and the pillar of growth, because obviously we went from bottom of the bottom of the bottom, and it literally does not get any lower than how we have been treated in our history, and to where we are now. That is massive growth, and it's only gonna go higher from now. So that's basically how I see Emancipation Days. What our ancestors were so resilient through, and obviously they gone through unforgivable things, but now seeing where we are now and how we uh, how we've grown from that is, I think that's a big sign of it, and I think it's only going to grow more from that.
I'll end it off by saying, with Emancipation Day, I'll kind of tie it into what Coach said. I think that you should do some research. You should educate yourself on the matter. And if you don't want to on this one, go see your favorite music genre and see where it stemmed from. Go see your favorite athletes and see what they had to overcome. I think it's deeper than just this one day, and I feel like every individual should do their own research just to see what this country was actually made on.
And for me, I guess Emancipation Day is just awareness of the past, just so we can inspire change in the future and hopefully have a better tomorrow for everyone else that comes after.
Absolutely.
Well said.